Hey guys, Moneyman300 back for some more Forza 6 videos, and we are kicking off our tips and tricks with this video here, and this one's going to be a general, just a bunch of things that I think can help you improve your Forza game or your racing game. A lot of these are not just specific to Forza, but they could be any racing game in general. But this is going to be for the player that maybe you're relatively new to the series, or maybe you're just starting to get a little bit more serious and you want to get better at it. If you're dropping top 10 leaderboard times out there and winning all your multiplayer races, I don't know how much you'll get out of this, but you still might get something. I'm going to cover a few settings and things like that. But in general, this is just going to be high level things you can do to start improving your game, start moving up the leaderboards, start becoming competitive and winning multiplayer races, winning single player race, whatever your goal is in the game. These are hopefully some tricks that can help you, and let's get right into it. Now, this is going to be there's going to be follow-up videos to this where we'll dive deeper into a few of these topics. I'm going to link back to a couple of videos I've done in the past that are very, very applicable to this. And then we're going to dive into tuning and building and all of those things as we go through our Forza 6 tips and tricks series. But first thing, we're going to start with some more general stuff. And I want to talk about settings real quick. Now, I have a video out there, and you may have already seen it, but just in case, I'm just going to run through this real quick, and that is your controller settings. And this is specific to a controller, not a wheel. If you're using a wheel, most of these tips are still most everything I'm going to go over is applicable, except for this little piece here. I use all the standard stuff, but I do switch my handbrake and my clutch so that I have clutch on the A button. If you're manual with the clutch, this is the easiest way. I'll link the video on how to do that stuff. But anyway, what I really want to go in here and show is you want to come in here, and the first thing you want to do, if you do nothing else, adjust your dead zones for your steering, your acceleration, and your deceleration. I think the defaults on these are like 10 and I don't know what they are, 10 and 90 or something like that. I don't remember what the defaults are. I guess I could just reset them real quick because I know what I change everything to. So yeah, look at 24 and 95 is your steering dead zone. You got to go like 24 degrees in your controller before this thing ever does anything. For me, that just doesn't work. It's super sluggish. I like 2 and 98. You can go 5 and 95. You can go 0 and 100. I like just a little bit of dead zone in there to help out, but not a lot. So I do that, and I do that for all three of these. I go 2 and 98. This is my favorite settings. This could vary by controller, and you may have to go to 5. You may be able to go to 0. I could go 0. I used to run 0 quite a bit, but then you just kind of barely touch it in your turn, and I like to have just a little bit of play in there. So 2 and 98. Do that. Trust me. It's so much more responsive just by doing that. I have no idea why their dead zones are so huge in Forza, and they've been in I think just about every one of these games. You have to come in here and change this, and it makes a big deal. The rest of these doesn't matter. I don't know why you'd have a clutch access dead zone when a clutch is literally just a button. Now, maybe if you're using a trigger, you've done some switching and different things like that. I don't need the handbrake and the vibration scale. That's up to you. I like to leave that at 100. So first, we get that changed, and we go from there. Now, we get that out of the way. Let's start talking about the things that can actually help you when you're racing. What I would suggest first, and how I would approach this, is there's some fundamental things that I think will help every Forza player get better. And the first thing is assists. I recommend turning off all of your assists. And let me get an assist screen up. Can I get an assist like here? Somewhere, HUD, video, audio, or do I got to go into a race? I probably got to go into a race. So let's go. Let's just pop into some. I think I can get in free play. Let's pop into some free play here, and let's talk about the different assists that we've got here. So let's pop over to assists, and let's look at this. And I'll show you my normal setup and what I use, and this is. To me, this is a base minimum that you should start with, and there's some other things that you could do. So I use a braking only line. Sometimes I'll turn it off if I'm, going for that full realism. I wouldn't use that. The full line is really unnecessary, and you're just wasting credits. So I do braking only. I turn ABS off. These are the things I think that are really going to help you get better. Learn to brake without ABS. It does help cut down on your braking distance. You get way up into the higher classes, X class and some P class stuff. Not as big of a difference, but in general, learn to drive without ABS. I use normal steering. I feel like simulation steering is better suited for the wheel, but there are people, if you watch Race Boy and that, he will use there is this assisted option. I definitely wouldn't use that unless you're just a kid and you're learning how to drive. And that assisted, my son uses that, and that's why I say that. Let me turn that ABS back off. But simulation steering, it depends on how much you counter steer. So if you don't counter steer a lot, which I think not doing that is a really advanced technique, I really would use normal. Unless you're someone that's already used simulation, you're used to it, you get that snapback counter steer that takes you right up the track. Just use normal here, no big deal. It works well. That's my recommendation. Again, these are things I think are going to help you get better. Turn off traction and stability control. And I say this because my next point will be starting in the lower classes to learn how to drive. So you start in E and D class and you work your way up. Turn off all the assists. I would probably, if you're doing automatic, I would start with manual. Go to manual. Once you learn manual, then switch to manual with the clutch. I'll link the video here if you want to learn how to do that. I show a demonstration on how to do that. But yeah, start with manual, then move to manual with the clutch. So at least go to manual here. Learn to drive manual. It is faster. Your ability to control your shift points is going to help in turning, help with acceleration. There's just so many things that it helps with, damage, rewind, whatever you want to do there, depend on, what you're doing for that specific game session. Let me put this back before I forget. So I do manual with the clutch. So this essentially is assists off. Yeah, I got the braking line on and I got normal steering, but learn to drive without the assists. You will get faster, and you'll probably get faster quicker than you think you might. It's really not that hard, and it doesn't take very long to learn to drive without these assists. So that's the assist. That's tip number 1. Actually, that's tip number 2 because the settings was the first one. Tip number 2, learn to drive without the assists. The next thing that I would do is start in a lower class. I know everybody wants to hop in and get a Ferrari and get a Lamborghini and get a Bugatti and then go 200 miles an hour. And maybe that's the goal in your game. And if that is, this video probably isn't for you, because this is to help you to be a better racer. And top speed driving, while it's cool, I don't consider that to be circuit racing. And while there's a couple tracks that benefit from that, what I'm trying to do is help people, and help anybody watching this video just to get better overall. Start in the lower classes. Turn the assists off. Start in D class at a minimum. I don't run much. I say D class because I really don't do any E class. Maybe you start in E. That's fine also. And when you're doing that, I got better probably primarily through running initially, my early days with Forza 2, running laps in Rivals. And just, it can become really addictive if you haven't spent much time on Rival, trying to beat your time, trying to better your time, maybe trying to beat your friend's time, trying to beat Race Boys times, or maybe mine, or Rock King, or Stella, Super GT, some, people that you might watch videos with out there, trying to beat their times. It's a lot of fun, and there's some different things going on here. But if I come out here and I look at D, and there's a lot of tracks, what I used to do, and I still do this to some degree, is I would start right here to the left, and I would learn this track, and I would drive it in a low class like D class. Figure out what cars work well, though, and that'll be my next point as I get to it. But I can't stress this enough. I really believe starting in a lower class will help you. Start in E, start in D. Learn to drive, learn the tracks, which is another important point that I'll get to. Learn the cars, learn what you like to do, learn building and tuning, and start moving up from there, from D to C to B to A. And somewhere you're probably going to hit a sweet spot in there, and you're going to find some people really love driving in D class, and you might find that's something that you like a lot, or you might like C, or maybe you'll get all the way up to, you like the R and S and P and X up in the higher classes. But you'll know the tracks. You'll understand the nuances of cars as you go from one class to the next. You'll understand the building nuances and how it changes from class to class, and how you might tune a little bit differently. But I highly, highly recommend that you go out and do that. Go out there. I start in D. I think I probably did that because that's what I did in Forza 5, and then they came out with E class, and I really haven't messed with E class at all in here. So that's tip number, what are we up to? 3? Maybe that's 3. Is that 3? What do we start with? We start with settings, and then what did I do? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Anyway, but that's another tip. Next up are the cars in relation to the tracks. So let me go back in here. There are lots of different tracks here. There are different types of cars that work on the various different types of tracks. Do the best you can to use appropriate cars for the appropriate tracks when you're racing, and this is probably more specific to multiplayer, if you're just out, and if you're trying to set rivals times, you're going to want a car that's made and that works well on that track, right? You're not going to want to run, you know, a Miata, right, on Le Mans Classic, right? This huge straightaway, you're just going to get blown away. So I see a lot of people that just run the same car on like every track in multiplayer, and it works on about, you know, a third of the tracks, because there's really, and I'm going to get into this when we get into build, you know, a more specific building one, but there's really 3 or 4 ish, 3, 4, 5 different types of tracks. There's momentum, what we call momentum tracks. There are, and that's like these Alps tracks and Prague, and there's some other ones. I think Brands Hatch to me kind of falls into that category. There are speed tracks for like a Bathurst. So Bathurst is a little bit of an all-arounder, but it tends to favor cars with a higher top-end speed. These tend to favor cars that have speed and this momentum, speed, and a little bit of grip. So decent grip, decent speed. You really just need speed on a speed track, you know, for the most part. Tracks like a Catalunya are short. Those are grip tracks or short tracks, lots of turns, lots of things like that. And there's some that'll fall in between. Here's some tracks like Daytona, again, those a speed track. And then you have oval, which is a totally different beast in and of itself. So you've got the Indy and Daytona Tri-Oval. So those are a little different. And then I've got a couple of tracks in there which you call super speed, and that would be like the Le Mans, where it has you just want nothing but speed, no grip, you know, as fast as you can make a car and run it around that track. But that's just a quick example of, there are different types of tracks and there's different types of cars that work on those tracks. And it may seem overwhelming at first, but in my opinion, the best way to do this, let's say you wanted to go out and you want to lap Catalunya. Right, we'll do full here. Just come in here, look in rivals, and see, and hit X once so I can get to top scores. What are people getting this thing with? You can see it's like the Cosmo, the Civic, the CRX, the Golf, you know, smaller cars, the Alpha GTA, the MX-5, you know, the Jeep, the Mini. So a lot of different cars in here, but they're all going to be of the what we call the grip variety. Moving on from that, so understand what cars work well, and it's nice to have 3 to 4, at a minimum, 3 to 4 cars that you can choose from. A nice grip car, a nice speed car. You might have something that's a little bit of an all-arounder that kind of has a combination of speed and grip, maybe a momentum car, an oval car, and a super speed car. That's ideal, right? 5 or 6. You can get away with 3 or 4 in a class and still be fairly competitive when you're racing multiplayer and when you're doing this. Don't worry about the whole leaderboard cars and don't use them, and you'll hear that. Who cares, right? Drive what you want to drive to help yourself be competitive. If you're trying to get better at the game, give yourself, at least early on, every advantage. Once you've kind of mastered it with leaderboard cars and you're running lobbies over, then you can start to step down and challenge yourself with other cars. But go ahead and use those leaderboard cars. Look to see what cars are good on the tracks and take advantage of that. So there's that there. Next up, learn to build and learn to tune. So actually before I get to that, learning the tracks and learning not just the tracks, but racing lines, driving lines, how to take corners, the best way, the fastest ways around a track. And I'm going to link a video here that is that I did a video about a year ago in the Forza 5 time frame that talked all about that. Various racing lines, how to corners and apexes, early apexes, late apexes, double apex, and a lot of terminology like that to help shed some light on how to properly take turns, braking, acceleration points, track out points, all of those things. But a great way to learn how to do something is to watch somebody else do it. So let's say I'm trying to lap this, and we go up here. You can watch a replay of pretty much any one of these guys. So HLR Living got that #1 time up there. I want to see what he did, right? So I'm gonna go in here. I'll watch a replay. I spend sometimes I'll spend a fair amount of time. It's like, man, how did he take that turn? What speed did he have? They added the telemetry option in the replays in Forza 6, and it's really handy to get information. At this point in the game, you know, they figured out the best way to take all of these turns and the best spots, and you know, it's copying off of what, you know, these are real life tracks, and you know, these are the right ways to take them in real life as well, and what works, and pushing the cars to the limit. So I can come in here, get in whatever view you drive, you know, in car or whatever it is. I like to turn the telemetry on so I can see. That's mainly so I can see speed, and I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at, first off, things I like to look at is where did they brake at. So there's that break point. So they got a break point right in there. So I'm like, so I use it so you can use the marker, right? So he's breaking right in there, right on that 1,000. I think it's 1,000-meter marker, but or 1,000-yard marker. So, and I like to look at the speed he gets down, in the 80, 82, 83 mile an hour range on that turn. And then I'll watch them all the way around the track. I'll look at the break points. I'll look at where their turn-in points, speeds that they're taking certain turns. It really helps when you're tuning and building a car. And if I want to tune something and build something that's going to be competitive with the Cosmo, which is difficult to do in D-Class, that's a cool car, though. I like it. At least it's a cool-looking car that's good. Some leaderboard cars are just crazy ugly, but this one's a cool car. So I can get down with this one. But anyway, and just watch the replay. Right? See what they're doing. See how they're taking all these turns. There's other things you get from replay, like from this. I can see he's got a roll cage in there. You can learn some things about the build, but we'll get to that in a minute. So learn to drive. So there's 3 parts of this, right? There's your ability to drive and your track and applying the knowledge of a track to it. Right? That's kind of one aspect. It's the driving abilities. Then there's the building, and then there's the tuning. Those are really, in my opinion, kind of the 3 things, aside from settings and assists and all that. Your main 3 things is your driving, your building, and your tuning, and putting all 3 of those together to help you to be a better player. The ratios vary wildly. Like in these lower classes, I would put the build as the highest priority. A well-built car will beat drivers in a lot of cases because cars are slower, and you're dependent a little bit more on the build, and then subsequently the tune, then driving. Now if you can't drive, right? I mean, it's got to assume some level of ability to drive, but I place a very, very high priority on the build itself, and that's going to be the next tips and tricks topics that we move into are the build. So just to give you a heads up, because I think that's really important in these low classes, that you learn to build and understand the build appropriately. If you're not going to be there, and some people never do build and tune it, and that's fine. There are a lot of people out there that are willing to share their tunes. Go out on the Forza. Another great place to learn things is go to the ForzaMotorsport.net forums and go to the Tuners Lounge, go to the General. Just read up a little bit. They talk about tuning and different things, but people post their open source tunes. You can use YouTube channels like myself or Rock King or Stella, or Race Boy, whoever else. I shouldn't be saying people, because I always leave somebody out and I feel bad. But anyway, there are a lot of great YouTubers out there that give away their tunes. And also, you could just come out here and download them, right? You don't want to spend the time doing all that. You want to run the Mini Cooper, and you're looking for a good tune on it. Chances are these guys with these top 10 tunes are going to be pretty good. Now, they're probably a little fast and a little loose, but you're running in D-Class. And this is the great thing about starting in D-Class. You could just use them right out of there, right? There are a lot of different ones. You want the Alfa Romeo GTA? Just grab this tune here. HLR Warrior. Boom, got you a tune and a build, and now you're out there driving. You can come back and fine-tune and learn how to build and do those things, later on. Or actually, if you're going to get an Alfa Romeo GTA, you might as well just grab mine right there. It's on there if you want one. Although I'm only in 340. I really dropped. I think that at one point that was top 100. But anyway, different story, different day. So grab it in here and do that. But ultimately, you don't have to. I guess if you always wanted to drive, ultimately, I like to be able to tune, right? I want to be able to go out there, tune my car, and fine-tune and build and do that. That I get enjoyment, but other people just want to race. If you just want to race, you just grab somebody else's tune, but at least grab it and get cars that are appropriate. Brands Hatch right here. You can see the cars that are good here. Grab one of those and use it. Grab 2 or 3 of them. Heck, grab a Mini Cooper, grab a Cosmo, grab a Alpha GTA. Maybe go down a little further, find something. Oh, look at a 69 Camaro doing pretty good there, right? You can grab 4 or 5 cars you think will be good there, and then you got a nice little repertoire of cars in D-Class to use, right? And you can go to any one of these, right? Go to a Bathurst, and you're going to see more speed type cars. A 65 Mustang is going to do good. The do everything 97 Civic, then the GMC Vandura. So Mercury Cougar, Plymouth Fury, a lot of muscle cars doing well on Bathurst. So that's the aspects that are going to really help you get better at the game. And I don't have a whole lot else to add to this video, and we're going on about 20 minutes. I don't want to ramble on too much longer, but I think those are all some tips. One other tip out here that I've heard somebody else say and I've used as well is run spec cars. Right, come out here, you run these spec challenges. And what spec is, for those of you who don't know, that's just stock. Straight stock car. So if I look at the restrictions on here, model must be the Audi S3 sedan and stock only. You really have to learn to handle a car when it's stock only. So you got to have good driving lines. You got to have all the good fundamentals in there. So that's one other thing I want to point out. I've heard somebody say, hey, go run hundreds of laps of Spec, and that's how they learn to drive, and they're a very good driver. So that's another tip, something else you can try out. Maybe it'll work for you, maybe it won't. I've done a little bit of it, but not a lot of it. So, but that's on that part. So anyways, settings, right? Go get them settings right. Get your assists, turn the assists off, start in a lower class, learn to drive, especially when it results assist, learn to drive manual and then ultimately manual with the clutch. I don't think you'll have much problem learning to drive without traction control and ABS. You'll run you'll run some laps around there and you'll start to get a pretty good feel for it pretty quickly as long as you're starting in an appropriate class. So get those assists taken off of there and learn driving in general. Start in a lower class and learn racing, learn the racing lines. Go back and watch my video on the racing. I think I called it the racing line or something like that, but anyway, I linked it in there. And learn how to do that, and then start your building and get some cars that are appropriate for tracks. Check rivals to see what cars are doing well. Grab those cars, grab their tunes and builds, and run them and see what you like. Then start learning to build your own cars and tuning. And maybe you'll want to start to learn and build and tune first. That's fine also. But all of those things are what's ultimately going to make you a better Forza player. And I'm probably leaving out, there's probably lots of tips and tricks, and I'm sure somebody will point some of those things out in the comments of things that, and I'd love to see them, of things that helped you become a better driver. Ultimately, it's about time, right? And if you want to be a good multiplayer driver, if that's what your thing is, then go race, right? Once you get the cars and get things sorted out, just race and race and race. Just run multiplayer races. Take your lumps out there. Get beat. See what cars are working well out there. When you see a car out there that you're getting beat by, go check it out. Maybe it's a car that some cars do really well in multiplayer that aren't as good in rivals, and vice versa. So sometimes you might think a car is good, but it gets out in multiplayer and just doesn't perform the way you thought. Maybe it's not fast enough. Things like that. So lots of things that you can do. I hope this helped. This is really the kickoff to our tips and tricks for Forza 6. We're going to get right into building in the next videos and move into tuning, and we'll talk all kinds of different stuff. Still going to mix in some tunes and some racing and all that good stuff also. So anyways, I'm going to wrap it up with that. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.